do not skip. I want to show you why I fell in love with the dongle. I'm going to take this dongle here, plug it into this machine, which powers the dongle through the MIDI port. And then I'm going to go to this MIDI Bluetooth controller here and turn it on. And in a few seconds, they're linked. And I'm now able to play this synthesizer with this MIDI Bluetooth controller. And it happens automatically. And it's not the only thing we can do with it. So keep watching. I've been following CME and their development with wireless MIDI for quite some time. I find them interesting as a company because they're full of MIDI people. And they're kind of like the modular people, only they're doing MIDI instead. Either way, I'm more than just a fan of their products. I'm also a backer of one of their pre-order campaigns called the U-Host. And that project was successful. They delivered a little bit later than I was hoping for, but yeah, it delivered and it is exactly what they said it was gonna be. So I'm positively biased towards this company and what they're doing. Over the years, I've gotten convinced that they're pretty much the leading ones when it comes to MIDI dongles and low latency and making stuff that plugs and play, which I love so much. So I got in contact with them and said, hey, I'm a YouTuber, send me stuff. And so yeah, they did. They sent me stuff. Now, I originally just asked for these two things here, but they ended up sending all of this. And there is no agreement between me and them about what I show or what I say about these things. Alright, so in the intro, I showed you how I connected a Bluetooth MIDI controller directly to a dongle connected to a synthesizer, and by just turning them on, they linked up and I could start playing that synth with that controller. Well, like I said in the intro, it's not the only thing we can do with them, because we can take two of these dongles, plug them each into their own machine, and once the machines are turned on, the dongles will be powered by the MIDI out port, and when they're powered and on, they will link up together and now they're synced. And so if we do our settings for the clocks correctly in these machines, they can now sync with each other, and once we press play here, both machines will start and they'll be perfectly synced. Now, you can of course also connect these to laptop and desktop computers wirelessly over Bluetooth, and also smart tablets and smartphones. Here, I'm sitting on my balcony, just enjoying all the greens we've got growing. And then I've got my iPad here with AUM running. In it, I've got a little session with some apps, and I'm sending MIDI clock out to the dongle connected to my MC101 here. I've been taking these little dongles with me everywhere when I've been out and recording materials for my outdoor series videos. And one thing I did was I sat down in a park with this setup here, and I sat down doing generative music. I was basically just running a few plugins inside AUM here, MIDI plugins, and sending that signal out to the dongles here connected to my Duo 6A and also the UnoSynth Pro. What I like so much about this is that this little dongle here replaces a lot of other gear that is usually wired, like a MIDI interface, a USB hub, and all the cables required and powering options and all the stuff you need to get this to work. All of this replaced with one dongle. Can you see now why I fell in love with it? And all of this just works, but instead of 16 times the details, we're getting 16 MIDI channels wirelessly over Bluetooth. And I just pulled a very, very stale joke that only gamers are gonna get, specific gamers playing Bethesda games. I'm sorry, people, I'm still learning how to human. However, there's some truth to it.
Sometimes it doesn't just work.
Sometimes it's a bit tricky to set up, and I want to talk about that next. And after that, I'll show you some options. When you are doing wireless setups like this, you have to think about the order in which you're turning devices on and which of the devices have their Bluetooth on. You see, I had problems sometimes connecting to these things when I had multiple smart tablets and smartphones in the vicinity with their Bluetooth on. And there were many times when I started out trying these things where I tried to connect to a certain dongle and I couldn't, because I then realized it had already linked up with one of my Bluetooth MIDI controllers instead. So always consider the order in which you're turning stuff on and what devices have their Bluetooth on and things like that. That's just the nature of Bluetooth. It's not just MIDI, it's anything with Bluetooth really. Now, in the case of the WIDI dongles, there is actually a way of grouping certain dongles together, and you do that with the WIDI app. You download it for free on the App Store, and it's actually the first thing you should run whenever you're getting a new WIDI dongle. Always make sure that the firmware for your dongles are up to date. And here's another little pro tip for you. There is another thing you can do inside the WIDI app, and that is name your devices. And you should always do that with your Bluetooth devices, especially when you have multiples of them. But there is a problem because they look the same. So if I just name them WIDI Master 1 and 2, I'll still be going crazy trying to figure out which one is which.
Experience, people. I went completely bonkers trying to do it that way.
Here's what I suggest. You put colored rubber bands on them and then you name them after the color. So, WIDI Master Red, WIDI Master Blue. And then it would be easy for you to find out which is which if you have many of these. Now, apart from managing dongle groupings and also connection orders and things like that, you also have to manage all of your MIDI channels and MIDI signals. Here's an example. Here I've got two groove boxes. One is the Roland MC101 and the other one is the WA Live XFM. Both of them have 4 tracks each. Here I can just put in a pair of dongles and have them sync up. However, the next thing I need to do is to make sure that at least one of the machines have a different set of MIDI channels for all the tracks. So the way that I've done it is on my MC101, tracks 1 to 4 are working on MIDI channels 1, 2, 3, and 4. And my WA Live XFM, its 4 tracks are working off MIDI channels 5, 6, 7, and 8. And that way, whenever I press play, they just simply play together. They won't trigger each other's tracks with MIDI notes and or CC data. Alright, so let's say you want to turn your wired MIDI connection into a wireless MIDI connection. So there are mainly 2 types of wired MIDI connections. One is USB and the other one is DIN5 MIDI. Now these might look a little bit different depending on which device you're using, synthesizer, sequencer, drum machine, MIDI controller, whatever it might be. So you need to check what type of connection that you have, and then you need to get the right product for that connection. For a USB MIDI connection, you want something like this. For a regular DIN5 that can power through the out port, well, you just need one of these. However, you might have a device that can't output power through the MIDI port, and in that case, you're gonna need this one instead, which has a USB port for adding power to it. In some cases, maybe you're fine with some wired connections, but you want to connect that whole setup wirelessly to a smart tablet, for instance. Then you could use something like the CME WIDI Through box. As you can see, they've got multiple interesting types of dongles and solutions for making your stuff wireless. And quite recently, they put out something new that you can basically order over Amazon, and I'll be buying one of these myself. It's called a WIDI Core, so you can take their technology and build it into something. And I think that I will be building a little wireless MIDI module for my modular that I'm putting together. Alright, so sometimes this doesn't work at all. And it's always when I try to sync hardware with software. I sometimes get desynced sessions. And very often, it doesn't matter how much I try to latency compensate or if I'm restarting my sessions, sometimes it just won't work. And I've been trying to find out why. And so I've asked a lot of developers about this. How is it that when I connect all of my hardware together, I can get them to sync perfectly, both over cable and wirelessly, but as soon as I mix in some software, it doesn't always work properly? They keep bringing up the fact that implementing MIDI into an app is pretty easy because it's kind of a simple protocol, maybe a bit too simple as it is right now. Maybe it needs to be more advanced, so it's easier to put in check marks and stuff like that, that makes sure that the syncing and everything works perfectly. If anyone else in the audience know more about this stuff, then why don't you just type it out in the comment section? It would be really helpful to me and anyone else who is interested in this stuff. Maybe MIDI 2.0 can solve this problem with syncing software with hardware. I don't know. Alright, so CME are true MIDI nerds. I'm not just talking about wireless MIDI, but MIDI in general. Whenever there's something new about MIDI, they always post about it on their website and also in their Facebook group, which I joined like a few months ago. There's always something interesting in there, and you should be following them. And not just for the MIDI stuff, but for something else. A project called I.W.A. I.W.A is an acronym for Instant Wireless Audio. And I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am about that, because wow, I would want that. I would want some instant wireless audio. And what's so nice about CME is that they actually want to know what their potential customers want out of a product. So they will have discussions online, and they will also put out polls that we can vote on. And I can tell you that the results from the first polls and discussions that were being had about this I.W.A resulted in CME deciding on making a little dongle that can plug in to the headphone port of a mobile device or whatever you might want to connect it to and have some wireless audio going on. So, if you're interested in any of this, the wireless MIDI, wireless audio, any of the products I've shown you, I've put a bunch of links down in the pinned comment and also in the description, like I always do. I just love how most Bluetooth MIDI controllers are supported by these dongles. So you can take any of these and connect them directly to this with just a pair of dongles plugged into the MIDI port. You turn them on and you're good to go. It's amazing. No weird boxes in between, not a bunch of cables, nothing. Just a pair of dongles and you're good to go. The second thing I love with these MIDI dongles is that I can bring a lot less gear with me because I don't need hubs or MIDI interfaces for the MIDI. I can just plug in these things into the synthesizer, and the only thing I need to worry about now is getting the audio into my iPad. And since the iPad only has one port, well, I just want to minimize the stuff I have to connect to it, because it makes the setup I'm bringing with me whenever I'm mobile much easier to bring. Look at this setup. 2 external synthesizers, a mixer, an iPad, and a portable speaker. You see, all this gear is either being powered with rechargeable batteries for the gear that can have that, or built-in rechargeable lithium batteries, or a rechargeable USB power pack, which is also a rechargeable lithium battery. And yeah, we should probably at some point discuss how easy or how hard it is to actually replace these lithium batteries. Yeah, we should probably talk about this. Over the years, I've tried going mobile so many times, and I'm talking about bringing regular studio gear with me outside. Back in the day, I had to build my own voltage converters. I had to lug my own moped and sometimes car batteries around to actually make stuff work. Big speakers with their own batteries inside of them. So yeah, I've tried so hard, and this setup right here has been the easiest thing I've ever had to set up and bring with me. And so I'm gonna end on that note. And so thank you so much for watching. And if you want to support the work I do here on the channel, then give me a thumbs up. Because if you don't want to support the work I do here on the channel, then you should just give me a thumbs up. If you want to support me in any other ways, check out the links down below. And as usual, I wish you a very productive week. Now go finger all of your stuff and have a lot of fun doing it.